Today's today what I'd like to do is first of all we're studying in memory of it's Yom HaZikaron, it's Memorial Day in Israel, so we're studying in memory of those who were killed al Kiddush Hashem, who died in as part of their service to the land of Israel, and so I want to mention that at the beginning, at the outset. The majority of what we're going to study today is Parashas Tazria, which is talking about the beginning part of the portion, which talks about that after that a person is supposed to have a bris, a baby has a bris on the 8th day, and a woman after she gives birth has what's called tumas leda, the ritual impurity from giving birth, and she has the sin offering. Before we get to that, I want to just conclude what we were discussing last week. On Monday, which was talking about the sin of Lashon Hara, because it relates to the Daf Yomi for tomorrow. Whenever there's an intersection between our Daf Yomi and the portion, then I always like to mention it. But first of all, let me tell you a story that our son Max called me from Israel, and he said that he went to daven this past Shabbos. He davened with Rav Nevinsal. Rav Nevinsal is a big Rosh Hashiva in the land of Israel. He lives in the old city. He's the Rosh Hashiva, think of Yeshivat HaKotel. He's a tremendous, pious man, a big tzaddik, huge Talmud Chacham. He's 96 years old, and he davened at sunrise. So Max said he was going to daven. He went to daven with him. So he didn't know when he would start. So he got there to the house, to the apartment building, an hour before sunrise. And he figured he would wait for people to go in. But when he got there an hour before sunrise, the door was open, and there were already a lot of people there. And Rabbi Nevinsal was just studying. He was learning. 96 years old, and he said he stood the whole davening. So he said they davened nates, and then after the nates, then everybody sat down, and people were just throwing questions at Rabbi Nevinsal, like asking him questions, and he was just answering them. So one of the questions they asked is in the context of Lashon Hara. That's why I'm mentioning it. They asked him if you're allowed to say, if a person is allowed to speak Lashon Hara with their wife. So it was all men. So they asked him if you're allowed to speak Lashon Hara with your wife. And so, what do you think he said? He said yes. He said you can, because he says the Talmud says Ishto Kegufa, a man's husband is like his wife. So therefore, it's like you're allowed to. He said you're allowed to speak this Lashon Hara with your wife. That's what he quoted Rav Nevinsal as saying. So then somebody said, so it's like your psychiatrist. So he said, no, your psychiatrist you can easily change. The wife is more difficult. Anyway, that's what what I'm sharing from Rav Nevinsal. So. Okay, that's the first point I wanted to make, that story about Max and Rav Nevinsal in the old city. I encourage him to daven there every week, every Shabbos until he leaves, because it sounds like an incredible opportunity down with a big tzaddik. Then the second thing I wanted to mention before we get to the this week's parasha is a statement from the Daf Yomi for tomorrow. Because it's right on point with what we were discussing on Monday, and that is Amar Rav Sheshes Mishum Rebbe Elazar ben Azariah. So Rav Sheshes said in the name of Rebbe Elazar ben Azariah, Kol Misaper Lashon Hara, whoever engages in saying Lashon Hara to others, says something bad about person to other people, V'kol Makabel, and whoever believes in Lashon Hara, Meyud Edus Sheker, or whoever testifies falsely or basically says lies about another person, it's appropriate to throw this person to the dogs, or it's worthy to throw this person to the dogs. As it states in Exodus 22, verse 30, that if there's meat in the field that is treifa, it's just unslaughtered meat, it's unsacrificed meat, you shall you shall not eat it. So you shall toss it to the dog. And right next to that in the verse it says, Lotisa Shem Hashav. You're not allowed to basically take God's name in vain. And so we see from this verse, Lotisa Shem Mashav, that you're not allowed to take God's name in vain. We learn that you're not allowed to receive, that you're not allowed to accept lashon hara, and that you're not allowed to tell over lashon hara, because even though it says Lotisa Karibe, we read it as Lotasi. You're not allowed to say to others this lashon hara. So this is the text of the Talmud. It's a little bit might strike people as an exaggeration, because it says if somebody says lashon hara, it's appropriate to throw him to the dogs. Well, why, of all the things to say, why would we say it's appropriate to throw him to the dogs? What's the Talmud saying here? Anybody have an idea? What's the Talmud saying here when it says it's appropriate to throw him to the dogs? It seems like it's just like a rhetorical flourish. So there's a lot of commentary on this. The Meiri writes, it doesn't mean that you're supposed to throw him while he's alive to the dogs, but it means that after he dies, you should throw him to the dogs, because anybody who speaks like this, then after he dies, don't assume that he's like a human being. It's almost like he's animalistic in his nature. And so therefore, since he acts like an animal, you treat him after his death like an animal, which is like, it's as though he's being tossed to the dogs. The Maharal gives a different explanation. Maharal says that what's the comparison between somebody who's a Baal Lashon Hara, who's somebody who's basically a person who routinely speaks Lashon Hara, and somebody and the dogs, is because the Baal Lashon Hara, because he's doing these sins to such a great degree, he's not really part of society. And it says that God saw all that he made, and behold, was very good. But the Baal Lashon Hara is inherently bad. So therefore, he's almost like apart from creation. Therefore, he's worthy. It doesn't say we actually throw him to the dogs. He's worthy to throw him to the dogs. Okay, there's a lot of other explanations. I just want to make one more point. That even though from this text it makes it sound like Lashon Hara is not true, because it says that the source word is Losisa Shema Shav, and Shav usually means false. Nevertheless, the Chafetz Chaim writes that Lashon Hara certainly includes if you say words that are actually true, because you're not allowed to say to a judge, included within the prohibition of Lashon Hara, is saying something to a judge before the litigant comes. So even though it's true, it's certainly going to be included within the prohibition. And I think that to a certain degree, the problem with malicious speech is actually worse if it's true. Because if it's not true, you can easily just say this is false. You can just go to everybody and say, listen, this statement that he's making is false. But if it's true, you can't say that because it's true, so you can't undo it. And so therefore the problem with Lashon Hara is even to a certain degree worse if it's true. And this is just the coda to what we were discussing in the at the end of Parashas Mitzorah. We were talking about Lashon Hara. And so in that context, we mentioned these things about this teaching from the Daf Yomi, that if you speak Lashon Hara regularly, you're worthy to be thrown to a dog. And also that story from Rav Nebenzahl, who told Max that you're allowed to speak Lashon Hara with your wife, in case it ever comes up. I guess also obviously your wife can say it to her husband. Okay, so that's the background. Hold on, let me stop here.